Thanks very much for your presentation. I totally agree with Nasa Hurricane there on the analogy with COVID. I don't like it either, and I don't think it serves us well here. Not because of the ease, because that's obviously what Gardaí do well, is educate and force and all the rest of it, but it's because COVID was emergency legislation, very, very rigid emergency legislation that was brought in to try and contain a pandemic, and brought in on a very understandably temporary basis. So I don't like the comparison with it, because as somebody who sat on the committee for the 8th Amendment and trying to design the legislation around the termination of pregnancy, we discussed this issue a lot, and what we're trying to achieve here is that women, pregnant people, can access their legal right to advice or termination of pregnancy or any sort of healthcare around it without being bullied, harassed, intimidated, insulted, told that they're murderers, being shown horrible images that have to do with their body or the potential of their body reproducing. And that is what we're trying to deal with here. And safe access zones are not enough. We need to change the whole societal approach to this issue of women's healthcare. So I have a couple of questions for you, and the first one is, because it just struck me when I was coming in here today, I'm not on this committee, but is it unusual for Gardaí to come into a health committee to talk about legislation around health? Is it unique? Is it unusual? I know you appear at the Justice Committee regularly, but what about dealing with the health committee?
Well, I certainly haven't been here before. I know there was probably some engagement around the COVID regulations, extensive here on the part of our Exec Director Legal, but certainly it probably is.
I think it's very fair that until COVID, I have never in my career engaged in health legislation or health committees.
Okay, and it's just an observation because I just found it unusual, but what I would like to focus on is the comparison with polling stations. Now, I've been warned by Gardaí many times about polling stations, particularly in the early days of when it was implemented, because there wasn't what you refer to a general understanding that you don't go 50 metres or whatever closer to it, or that you don't poster within 50 metres of it. You know, as a political activist, I've been warned quite a few times. I've had a lot of my supporters. Gardaí are on the ball, real quick, there to tell you outside the 50, you're not to be distributing those leaflets or having those discussions or putting up those posters. They're very proactive about it. And I think the idea that you would need signage around James's Hospital, which I live near as well, or indeed around the Coombe Hospital where I used to work, or around a doctor's clinic is just nonsense. I think we do need to get to the point where citizens understand you are not allowed within 100 metres of a healthcare giver to intimidate women or pregnant people. You're not allowed to carry those signs. You're not allowed to shout those remarks at them, or you're not allowed to say the rosary within the 100 metres. Because I'm assuming when you repeatedly talk about competing rights, you're talking about the right to protest versus the right to access healthcare. And in that, to that end, I'm going to say something which I don't know if you can change it on your pulse system or not, but I think calling anti-abortion protests pro-life protests is insulting to me. I'm pro-life. I'm for the right of women to live in the manner that they choose, and calling them pro-life protests in an official way, I think should be changed. They need to be called something else, but not something that it intimates that the rest of us are anti-life, or that, you know, anti-choice protests or whatever. But please don't call them pro-life in an official way, or record them in as that manner. But I do think
just to be clear, Deputy, I use that phrase, and I honestly can't definitively say that that's what they're recorded as, but it's a for instance. You know, if we take some other kind of protest, you know, if we just, you know, go to the other end of the spectrum altogether, you know, if it was a water protest or some other type of so it would be the title of the protest as opposed to the detail of it. So I didn't mean to offend anybody by using that phraseology.
No, sorry, just to correct, I'm not taking offence in that manner. I just would like the pull system to be changed to call it something other than pro-life protests, because that I don't think is fair to us. And I just want to talk about the Public Order Act, because I don't know if in your submission you think you need more powers to search or to go into people's homes or whatever. I'm not clear about that. Maybe you could just elaborate. But under the Public Order Act, do you think it would be possible to bring in a piece of legislation for safe access zones that amends the Public Order Act to include the 100-yard or the 100-metre limit outside healthcare? That's probably a question for yourself as the legal advisor. But is it possible to bring in, at the same time as we bring in this legislation, an amendment to the Public Order Act to include the 100-metre limit outside providers of abortion care? I haven't, Bríd, I'm one of those, Deputy, I'm one of those people who need a little bit of time to distill that thought. But if I tell you why we think the public order model has worked and why we think maybe it is suitable in this regard, is that you have that tried and trusted model. The difficulty with the new model as we see it is the type of conduct, and you yourself gave a really good overview, includes behaviours that in many circumstances, but not in these particular, would not be viewed as intimidatory. And I'm completely accepting that rows of people praying in front of you in your journey towards a safe legal access that you have a constitutional entitlement to not be intimidated would not necessarily fall under the Public Order Act, because of the nature of the behaviour would change the definition of what public order is, which is what this Act is doing in a particular zone, which will be defensible, whereas making that general rule would be too enlarged, in my view, to be, well, it may or may not. In the whole state, it would be difficult to suggest that people praying in proximity to you outside of a particular zone could be viewed as intimidatory. It might not by other people, but I would like, if possible, for Superintendent McNamara, with the actual policing experience. I'm not a member of the police service. I'm Garda staff and employed for legal advice, but it's trying to bring the best operational experience together to inform this committee. And you're absolutely right, it's an unusual juxtaposition for the Guards to find themselves in, apart from the Health Act 1947, which no criminal lawyer ever thought they would know pre-COVID. So, Michael, if you want to maybe expand from a policing perspective.
I suppose that gets back to the point, just to clarify in relation to the fact that what I stated earlier about the Public Order Act serving as well. That was just in relation to the Section 8. It's very important to understand that. It wasn't the Public Order Act in its totality. It was just a Section 8, which is our authority to request people to desist from certain behaviour and to request them to leave the situation. And what my point was in relation to that was to have some consistency, and it would make it easier from a practical point of view that we're not dealing with two pieces of legislation for essentially doing the same thing. So the Public Order Act could possibly be amended to deal with some of that prohibited behaviour. So then we're actually having one provision to deal with requesting people to leave a particular vicinity. So that was the point that I was trying to make there. And again, I suppose that then goes back to the whole definition of the zones and the curtilage, because everything is triggered on the clarity of the zones. In terms of the curtilage it's a very loose term. There's no clarity in law as to what a curtilage actually means, how far it is from the property. And then you put 100 metres on top of that. Where's the outside line? Because that's what's going to determine, I suppose, or trigger us in terms of exercising that power to request or to give a warning. So all of that is linked. Along with that, there is a definition of a public place within the new bill. It may be helpful for consistency purposes that if consideration is given to aligning that with the definition of public place under the Public Order Act. So again, we're dealing with consistency, and it makes it that bit easier from an implementation and practical point of view.
Okay, just two things to come back to you on, and then I'll stop, Chair. First is in relation to the curtilage. This is my point. Guards don't have a problem. The ordinary guard on the beat does not have a problem about the curtilage around a polling station. They're like that on top of you if you go over the 50-metre limit. They understand what the curtilage is there, and they don't have a problem identifying it. And polling stations can be also vastly different types of buildings. You could have a community centre with 4 entrances and big park space around them, and the polling station is inside it. Or you could have a school, an old Catholic school with railings that go on forever. They can be very different. They don't have a problem. I really don't understand why this business about the 100 metre from the curtilage has become such a big issue. It should be just clear. You can't go within 100 metres of where that service is being provided.
Yeah, if I might just say, there is a slight distinction between the electoral acts and what's proposed here. There's an option. It's either 100 metres from the curtilage or 100 metres from the entrance. There's an option there.
So what does the electoral act say? 50 metres from?
It's actually 100 metres. I have the section. Yeah, it's section 147 of the Electoral Act of 1992, and it's within 100 metres of such station. But it talks about for the purpose of promoting interests of political party. So it's the curtilage of the station or the entrance. Sorry if you can get it. Just bear with me for one moment.
You understood this law.
50. I had no idea. I just do what the guards tell me.
So if I just might refer to subsection 3 of 147, and it says, shall be measured from any entrance to the polling station or to the curtilage thereof. So my understanding from a meeting with the Department of Justice on Monday, they are looking at that at the moment with a view to changing it to the exit point or the entrance point in order to address the uncertainty around what the curtilage actually means.
And sorry, Chair, Sean, I just want to tease this out. At that meeting you had with them, did you suggest, or did they suggest, we look at the Electoral Act and compare it to the polling stations?
I don't recall whether that was mentioned or not.
It might be useful for us to suggest that to the department.
Yeah, but certainly I raised that point anyway. I'm not so sure whether I actually mentioned the electoral acts, to be honest. But there was a discussion around the curtilage and the distance and I suppose the practical concerns from a policing perspective. And that is being looked at the moment in terms of the distance, measuring the distance from the exit point or the entrance point.
And now I forget my second question, so I'll stop.
Okay.